So, one of the things in the last Democratic debate that Hillary Clinton has said over and over again, and this is not just in the debate, she said it time and time again, is when Bernie Sanders talks about trying to fight for single-payer health care, she makes this type of thing that he actually wants to end Obamacare. He wants to get rid of Obamacare and like literally just like leave it with nothing, which again is a very kind of disingenuous argument that she's making here. Because he's not going to he's not going to end it and then have nothing there until you get to single payer. But whatever. She's also very much come out in favor of how great Dodd-Frank is, which if people listen to my show, I've talked many, many times about the less than greatness of Dodd-Frank, for lack of a better word here. However, but she's a big defender in these recent debates and on the trail of both Obamacare and Dodd-Frank. However, some of Hillary's top advisors are actually lobbyists who lobbied against both Obamacare and Dodd-Frank. You wrote about it for The Intercept. Tell us about it.
Yeah, that's the interesting thing here. You know, Clinton has kind of given up the mantle of promising big progressive change, and instead she is trying to embrace Obama, saying, you know, it's too dangerous to go with Bernie. If you support her, she will be the guardian of Obama's big policy accomplishments, namely health reform, the Affordable Care Act, and Dodd-Frank. But again, if you look at who's fundraising for her campaign, who's staffing her campaign, you know, she's filled it with lobbyists who spent the last 7 years, and consultants who spent the last 7 years working for business interests to undermine those two big Obama policy accomplishments. So just to give you an example, one of her biggest advisors and fundraisers is a lobbyist named Steve Elmendorf. He was tapped by Goldman Sachs as their top lobbyist to help defeat and roll back the strongest provisions of financial reform, of Dodd-Frank. And he's continued to work for both Goldman Sachs and Citigroup to work with Republicans and conservative Democrats in Congress to chip away at the various provisions of Dodd-Frank that really give the most meaty parts of the law. And, you know, I know you've talked about this before, but, you know, Dodd-Frank is a kind of just a grab bag of different policies, some of them very strong, many of them not so strong.
Right. And
it's lobbyists like Steve Elmendorf, who's a senior figure with the Hillary Clinton campaign, who's actively working with the banks to weaken the very best parts of Dodd-Frank. And he's just one example. We listed a good number of them. Heather Podesta, another senior lobbyist, who's fundraising for the Hillary Clinton campaign. You know, she worked for and still works for Cigna, the big health insurance company that fought, you know, extremely aggressively against health reform. Was one of those health insurance companies that funneled secret contributions through several dark money groups to air all those attack ads. If you remember back in 2009, there were kind of wall-to-wall TV and radio commercials attacking health reform. She was working for one of the companies behind that. And then just a number of officials. We talked a little bit about Dewey Square a second ago. Those folks were working with the health insurance industry to undermine the reform law. And then finally, Hillary's top pollster and one of her senior strategists, Joel Benenson, his strategy group was tapped by a Wall Street consulting group that lobbies on Dodd-Frank in 2013. So, you know, you just kind of look at the net effect of this, that so many individuals associated with the Hillary Clinton campaign have gotten rich undermining Obama's big policy accomplishments. It makes you do a double take when you hear her promising that she's going to champion these policies going forward.